Once you start noticing shapes, you see them everywhere. Not copied, reused. Good product design is often simple, but there are only so many simple shapes out there. So it makes you wonder, how many combinations are left if novelty has an expiration date? But then you see it. A familiar form behaving unexpectedly. A material behaving in a way it never used to. Old ideas pushed just far enough to feel new again. Virtually every product we interact with was designed by someone we'll never meet. We'll never know how their idea started. The assumption is that the object was once fragile, a sketch. A question on paper asking, what if? But what if it's deeper than that? What if ideas don't begin on paper at all? What if they start when vision turns inward? In the dark, in silence, when the world stops demanding attention, when scale dissolves, when objects float. Many people get ideas in the shower, not because of the water, but because the noise disappears, and the mind is free to wander. Ideas arrive distorted, incomplete, abstract, more like a sensation than a shape. And once one stays long enough to be remembered, it starts asking to be made real. I've spent a lot of time admiring finished things, polished things, powerful things. Objects built to move, to cut through air, defined by motion. But at some point, watching isn't enough, because ideas don't become real until you apply pressure, until you commit, until you leave a mark. Man, I fucking love product design. In my life, I've had the good fortune of working on so many creative projects, but recently I've come to the realization that all of my efforts are living in the digital realm. Sure, sometimes I'll print my photos, right? And this is amazing. I walk by this every day and I get to recollect this journey I went on to this remote location in the middle of the desert, and I had to deflate my tires in order to, not get stranded out there. But this is what I want. I want to make something real. And so I've decided, let me do something with this. I've decided to start a 3D printed home decor business. If you're thinking about doing something similar, I'll take you along the way. From the start all the way to shipping of products. One person, one printer, very little money. Should be fine, right? Oh, hey. You may be assuming that starting a 3D printed home decor business would start by maybe sketching some ideas, but no. We're talking to girls from China, or maybe they're robots, or maybe they're dudes. I don't know. Doesn't matter, because this is not a dating site. We are ordering parts wholesale from Alibaba. I've decided that the first product I want to design and produce is a wall clock. A clock can take on countless forms and styles. And by sourcing a movement assembly, I can focus entirely on creating a distinctive and original design around it. That's why I'm chatting it up with Josie, Mandy, Minnie, and Carly, because they work for manufacturers who could sell parts for cheap. If I were to buy clock movement parts on Amazon, it would cost nearly $10. Way too expensive to buy and use for my own products. Luckily, my girl Josie came through. I ended up purchasing 350 clock movement parts for 56 cents a piece, plus $52 in shipping to the US, totaling $248. $248 definitely raises the stakes a little bit. That's also on top of the 3D printer cost, as well as all future filament purchases and other miscellaneous purchases like shipping materials and things like that. On the positive side, avoiding Amazon and going with a Chinese wholesaler resulted in a whopping 17x in cost savings per part. I'd highly recommend going this route for a small business. You just have to expect a lot of follow-up messages offering you lovely products like a Jesus water bottle or designer bear glassware. I mean, what says I need Jesus on a water bottle more than ordering 350 clock parts? Anyways, progress has been made. I picked a product to design, a wall clock specifically, which will kick off my 3D printed business. I ordered parts to design around. Now it's time to think things through holistically. Now, to formulate a vision for your 3D printed business, it's helpful to think things through both from the product level as well as the standpoint of the brand. So far, what I know is I want to sell products that have some sort of functionality, not just static sculptures. A clock is mostly for decor these days, but it technically does tell time, so it checks the box there. I also want them to be colorful. Most homes have white or gray walls, and colorful products can look amazing when paired with these neutral tones. As for the look and feel, I want my products to fit into the modern design category. Unless it's architecture, I'm just not a huge fan of ornamentation, so I want my products to be simple yet elegant. Lastly, with simple forms, nice details are needed. 3D textures and subtle transitions help add visual interest and depth without compromising the overall simplicity of the design. Now here's what I'm thinking about on the brand side of things. I want the brand to feel like it's related to 3D printing and design. For example, incorporating a visual element which conveys that something is being built or under construction would tie in nicely with the 3D printed process. Things like construction lines, grids, and wireframes could all visually communicate this idea. Next, I don't want the brand to sound too technical, like a fabrication lab or something. Things are being built, yes, but I want the brand to feel playful. Lastly, 3D printing is precise, and I also want to keep this in mind when forming a brand. I've been thinking of these qualities for a while, and then something clicked. While watching an Adam Savage video, he was talking about how he used to kit bash, layering tiny parts onto miniature props for film sets to make them feel complex and believable. George Lucas from Star Wars called those little added details greeblies, which are small, often non-functional pieces glued onto a surface to suggest mechanical complexity. In a way, 3D printing has its own version of greeblies. Layer lines, infill patterns, geometric textures, etc. When added detail meets visible structure, the result is a brand that celebrates how things are built. Introducing Greeble. Establishing a brand is huge, and with that in place, we could start the design process. Designing a product is hard though, so let's procrastinate a bit and just think about design. You don't want to immediately just start drawing ideas and sketching. It's helpful to first curate inspirational images to help you visualize the type of product you want to design. Pinterest is a common tool to do this, and after using it for a bit, here's what I came up with. I grouped inspirational images into 3 categories. First up, we have grid. Modern designs often have crisp edges to them, and studying grid-like forms seems like a no-brainer for designing a 3D printed clock. The next bucket of inspiration I put together centers around the theme of shapes within shapes. Designing the overall form is one thing, but there are so many cool things that could be done on the detail level. Textures within textures, implied shapes, and even disguising functional elements of a product within the product's texture. Finally, it never hurts to grab some inspirational images from other 3D printed products. Okay, now to finally start designing. But nighttime just hits different when it comes time to doing creative tasks. So, much better. I sketched a bunch of ideas, and not gonna lie, I didn't exactly come up with a ton of great ideas, but there were a few good nuggets in there. This idea here was intriguing, overlaying squares with mesh grids, but this would be kind of complicated and probably too many parts. So then I explored how to mark a clock by overlaying it onto a grid, and this ultimately led me to an interesting idea where these wedge shapes extrude up at random directions. After drawing this again with more clarity and refinement, the idea is set. The next step is to 3D model this thing, but I should probably wait until I get the parts from China so that I don't put in the work to figure things out and then get the parts and have to remeasure and redo a bunch of things, and it's not going to be good.
One eternity later.
All right. It took about a month and a half, but the parts from China are finally here. Few initial thoughts, shit ton of tape. I guess it's got to go a long ways, but also the package is a little smaller than I anticipated. I hope everything's in here, I should have 350 clock parts in this package. Sounds crazy. I'm so excited to open and actually kind of nervous to open this box because quick moment of confession, I actually took forever to do this unboxing video. So not only did a month and a half pass of shipping to me, but it was probably another month or two of me waiting to do this video. So I am nervous because there's no warranty period anymore. If what I want is not in this box,
What's in the box?
I'm so yeah, let's open this up. All right, moment of truth. So much tape. God. Woo! All right, right off the bat, I'm hyped because these are the right colors. So, sweet baby Jesus, it's all good. Look at how tightly packed this box is. Unreal. I mean, look at this. That. It's just all over the place. It's actually amazing that these look like they are intact. You can see the rest of the box. Woo! We're in business. The parts from China are in hand, but before deciding to do anything with them, I've decided to give myself a 10-day timeline to go from these plastic parts to a functional working product listed on Etsy. There's no time to waste, so the clock starts now. For the 3D model I'll be creating, I'll need to take a precise measurement of the clock movement assembly. To do this, I'll be using an old school dial caliper. First, I sketched orthographic views of the part. Next, I measured the clock movement with the caliper and added in the overall dimensions to create a rough engineering style annotation sheet. Oh, and by the way, if you have experience using a caliper but have never used a dial caliper, like a manual one here, just know I'm better than you. Yeah, all jokes aside, my teacher from design school told us to buy these like manual dial calipers instead of the digital ones because these are harder to use. And his argument was if you work in an office, people won't steal your caliper. I guess that happened to him. So we all bought these and here I am using a unnecessarily harder to use tool. But on to the next phase. By using the annotated drawing sheet I did with measurements, I created a precise 3D model of the mechanism I purchased. This model will be necessary for prototyping how this will fit within the clock design. Okay, here's the plan so far. Here's a rough sketch of the overall design. I colored this a little area in green because we're going to focus on how to hide our mechanism under a little cap and then disguise it amongst the rest of the design. Here's kind of what that looks like. Let me reposition this. We have our mechanism and it fits right inside this little cavity. There's a little space for the thread to go through. And also there's these little slots which will help dock the part into the base. Before printing and prototyping this, what needs to happen is a quick little prototype of just like the tolerance to make sure that this part right here fits nice and snug inside this cavity. Whipping up a test part in SolidWorks was super easy. I made 3 different parts with slightly different tolerances to test the fit. After printing these on my Bamboo P1S and checking how the clock movement fits in all of these parts, the version with the 0.2mm tolerance was perfect.
Nice.
With that tolerance in mind, I then 3D modeled an actual prototype for how this mechanism can be housed and assembled. Here are the 2 parts we just printed. The dimensions for the inner part right here came from this ring that we just prototyped. So we already know, look at that, fits perfect. What we don't know is whether or not these grooves right here and these grooves right here are going to fit nicely. So this is the cap, very simple, no design, we're just testing how parts fit together. So moment of truth. Oh, look at that. It's perfect. I use the same sort of tolerance from this test for this, and it works perfect. Yeah, There's only a few things. So you could see here the clock movement part sticks out a little bit more than I'd want. So that's easy. You could just make this dimension a little bit taller. Looking at it also, I think this cavity is a little deeper than it needs to be, because if I move it around, it shakes a little bit. Not a huge deal, but I think if I make this a little bit more shallow, it'll just press against the top part of this mechanism and hold it in nicely. Printer's broke. Yep. Entire means of production just went down. I mean, it's just the one printer, so kind of begs the question, is that even enough to support a 3D printed business? Luckily, it's just the phase of the project where we're developing things internally. I say we, it's just me, but yeah, gotta fix this thing. So, should be fun. Naturally, my first thought was to tap into my caveman IQ and poke this thing with a piece of plastic. After this doing absolutely nothing, I had to take my machine apart for the first time. And after I pulled this tube out, I found a jammed up piece of plastic. Problem is fixed, but another issue is at hand. When this thing's operational and printing, it's loud as fuck, and it's kind of problematic. Kind of specifically because of how my place is set up. Let me show you. This thing makes a ton of noise, right? But the issue is, so the noise will bounce, 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 and here we go. I do not have floor to ceiling walls. So the sound waves will just bounce right on over here, and then finally disrupt my sleep. I am running out of time. Learning to fix that 3D printer cost me like a day and a half, and so I need to hustle. I only have a week to finish everything. That's the product design and figure out how to sell and ship this thing to make my first Etsy sale. If I'm going to meet this deadline, I need to plan ahead and order some shipping supplies. I just spent a ton of time 3D modeling my concept and it looks great, but I have to pivot. Can you believe that? Let me explain. All right, so this is the product design. It's looking pretty sick. I stayed true to the middle cap prototype that I just did. You can see I added just more detail to sort of tie it in with this whole wedge shape, sort of square grid design I got going on. You can't even tell that this is a cap. And if I were to hide this, you could see that our part is inside. And so if I unhide that and then activate the section view, you can see what's going on. The cap just easily attaches to the base, bada bing. But where this gets complicated is that I realized I had to break this up into multiple parts because this is way too big for my printer. And that's when I started doing all of this. I'm like, okay, I got to split this up here and add some dovetails to combine these. And then, oh, maybe I need some channels to sort of improve the integrity and the strength. But thinking about this, I started to not envy future me having to assemble like 6 or 8 or even 10 different parts and form one solid cohesive product. So this product needs to be reduced. It's kind of sad because it'll lose a little bit of the design intent, but it needs to happen. Luckily, all I had to do was hide the outer ring of this larger clock design. And then I have a product design. Look at that. It's looking good. Now I just need to sort of patch these things up to just make it all solid here. And this was the little cutout I made to be able to swap out for the battery. And yeah, time to print her up. Here it is. This thing turned out so sick. As you can see, the middle cap area blends in perfectly with the form, and you can't even tell it's a separate part. It also fits perfectly snug when pressed into the base. To assemble this thing, I glued the mechanical movement assembly to the base of the clock, and then glued the cap on over it. Lastly, I pressed in the hands to install them, and then put in a battery to test it out. Woohoo! So far, everything up to designing and making a 3D printed product has been pretty smooth. But now it's time to ship this thing, and let me tell you, this is where everything starts to fall apart. I'm a little embarrassed to say, but the first box I bought was a 9x9-inch box that just barely was big enough to fit the product. I thought if I designed some sort of pull tab, I'd be able to pull the product out and I wouldn't need packaging supplies because it'd be nice and tight inside the box, but obviously the friction was way too much and the thing just wasn't able to be removed from the box. Sadly, since I had to order new boxes and it takes time for them to get here, it's gonna mean the 10-day deadline kind of just falls apart and dies. It's it's an unfortunate thing, but I'm not gonna quit and I'm gonna finish this project. This was the new box I ordered, and other than being appropriately sized, it only opens one direction, and that's huge because then I can control the user experience when opening the box. Before, the other box you could open from the bottom or the top, and it's just unpredictable. For the packaging, this is what I came up with. I have the Greeble logo here with a nice on-brand tissue paper. It looks pretty good. You open it up, and you can see the product is held in place by some 3D printed supports. In the middle is what is really most important. It protects the clock movement part. So if you open it up, you could see what's going on here. It'd be great if you could deliver an experience where the customer doesn't have to assemble the hands. The corners are what help hold the clock in place. Right here. Little parts that just put friction on the sides of the box and keep it in place. This is definitely a unique packaging setup, and the idea is the friction of this middle part will just hold against the box right here, press up, and it won't move around. After packaging up and assembling a bunch of clocks, I started getting nervous that my packaging solution was not going to be adequate. So I sent a test to my friend, and let's just say that was a good idea.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, so some of them broke off. I can see a couple of them. Some of them didn't make it, my guy.
What a disaster. Can you imagine starting an Etsy business and first product you ship arrives damaged and you just got 1-star, 1-star, 1-star reviews? No bueno. For my second attempt at packaging, I'm sticking with the same hard protective pieces over the center of the clock. But this time I printed a much beefier corner piece. These flat corner pieces will create enough surface area for me to add a sheet of cardboard over the top. On top of all of the products I'll need to repackage for shipping, I noticed that while I was doing product photography, all of the green clocks I printed had an hour marker that was just in an incorrect spot. So I'm gonna need to reprint like $200 worth of product. I sent the new packaging to my friend again, and somehow, despite having covered the clock hands, they arrived disconnected. At least the clock arrived intact this time, but how the hell did the clock hands arrive flipped over when I had a hard-shelled piece cover them? Anyways, for one more iteration, I added a little bump to the cover to apply pressure to the hands. Third time is a charm, so after shipping this product one more time to test it out, it finally arrived intact. With everything squared away, it was time to list this thing on Etsy and wait for orders to fly in. And waiting, I did too much of. For a whole month, while this thing was listed, I got 0 views, 0 clicks, nobody's seeing this thing, and of course, nobody's buying it. I even designed and listed a second product so that my shop wasn't so lonely with just one listing. The only good thing that came out of this long period of time of no sales was that I got to work on the packaging. I bought these blank label stickers from Avery and was able to print custom graphics on them. All I had to do was peel them off and place them over my blank box to add a professional look to my product. Coming back to the no sales problem, turns out the only thing I needed to do was initiate Etsy ads. As soon as I did that, some views started coming in, and boom, got my first sale. And that's it. This is the part of the video where I say I finally made something real.